going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. First thing first, if you could do me a favor, subscribe to the channel down below. Leave me a like, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. So you don't miss a single video that we're putting out over here. Also, leave me a comment down below. Let me know anything that you would like to see in the future, how you feel about this video, anything that you've seen in the past. Same old spiel. Not the same type of video today, though. So this is going to be my final predictive mock draft video that I put up. Now, I say predictive because I am going to put out one more mock draft. It's going to be a lot of fun where I'm going to spin a wheel of the four most likely players, whichever one it lands on. That's the player we'll pick. We'll have that out early next week. But going based off of, and shout out to my friend Drew Hannes, who put this information together for me in a spreadsheet. Top 30 visits, whether they met at the combine, private workout, all that good stuff. Taking that information into account, and we're going to do a mock draft with it. I do have a couple trades in here, just to very good chance we see more than that come draft day. But yeah, I feel okay about this one. Definitely more predictive than ones I've done in the past, like actually taking in this information and seeing how different it is. Kind of eye-opening when you look at like people want to match player to team, and that team hasn't even shown interest. Now, it could be a smokescreen, sure, but there's a lot of historical tendencies to take into consideration here too. So I'll share my screen. We'll dive into it. I have already gone through this, so I should be able to not fly. I mean, I want to explain the picks a little bit, but I've already gone through and done this once, put my picks down here. So I'm just going to be inputting them basically now. So let's go. And I'll make sure I'm not the big. How many times have I done that? Already made the couple trades here anyway. Number one, been a switch since Carolina jumped up. I think it is Bryce Young at this point. I wouldn't say I'll be shocked if it's CJ Stroud, or I think I would be a little bit shocked if it's Anthony Richardson. But I think just at this point, all signs point to it being Bryce Young, who, in my opinion, is the correct decision there. I think he is QB1 of the class. I think if he's even 6 foot 6'1", this isn't a discussion. It's the weight, I think, more than the height, though, to be quite honest with you. But when you look at today's game, quarterback's not getting hit a ton anyway. Carolina has a nice infrastructure there with their coaching staff and that offensive line to begin with. I think Bryce Young is the right call for them. That's the direction that I think they go. Number two is where it gets interesting, because this is where you start to have to try to look through the smoke screens. If Bryce Young is the only quarterback that they are in love with, do they put off quarterback again this season and just take Will Anderson, maybe the best player in the draft class? It's twofold for me, because one, you do have obviously a new head coach, so you would think that the leash is relatively long there with D'Amico, but Nick Caserio might have a short lease at GM, and when you take in both those factors, if they go into year 4 of Nick Caserio, which means obviously this would be year 3, you're basically punting on QB this year. That's a tough sell to the fan base. And also, I would imagine you're not going to be very good again this year. Now, Will Anderson's not going to account for, they won 3 football games last year. How much of a difference is Will Anderson going to make? I think there's some natural growth within there. Also, the division's not going to be any good. I still think they're a bad football team, but are they a lock to get Caleb Williams or Drake May? And I don't know. That, to me, that's a tough sell. Ultimately, I did go with quarterback here. They've met with all of them. It's a decision between CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson for me. Almost a coin flip. But I'm going CJ Stroud here. I think that there is a lot of smoke right now to them not being in on anybody besides Bryce. I don't believe that to be true. I do think they'll take a quarterback to extend that leash for Nick Caserio and say, hey, we got our franchise quarterback. Let's just, give me an extra year or two and let's see if he's the guy. Seattle makes a jump here, as you can see, going from 5 to 3 to jump Indy. Indy not going to be thrilled with this, although I think Indy likes both the guys that are still left on the board. I think Seattle has their eyes on one guy that's on the board at quarterback, and that's Anthony Richardson. I'm buying into this. I'm buying into the idea that Seattle is into this quarterback class and want to get a guy to sit behind Geno after that extension, and I love the idea of doing that. I actually jokingly made a video pretending to be Mel Kiper. I don't even know, probably a month and a half ago at this point. Actually, probably closer to 2 months, where I was talking about perfect landing spots for Anthony Richardson. I mentioned Seattle. I was half joking, but it is. I think that being able to sit behind Geno, it's a 3-year extension for Geno. He doesn't have to play out all 3 years of that extension when you look at the structure of it. So I think this is a great landing spot for Anthony Richardson. I'd be very excited for him, for Seattle, for everybody in this scenario. Maybe other than I don't know how Gino's going to be feeling, but Gino's such a great guy, and I think that he would embrace Anthony. Listen, like Gino's got the year that he's coming off last year, like he's going to do fine for himself. So, and then I think that leaves Indy with Will Levis. You are a Colt. Um, I I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. I think that Indy is in on Will Levis. I think they're totally fine with any of these four quarterbacks, and they would take any of these four quarterbacks. And man, I don't know how many GM seats are hotter than Chris Ballard. I just mentioned Nick Caserio. Chris Ballard, who's had a good bit of success in terms of his drafting on day 2, but recently, especially at finding the quarterback, it hasn't happened. Is Will Levis going to be that guy? I mean, I like Levis, don't love Levis. He is my clear for like QB4. But you gotta swing here at quarterback, in my opinion. You got to go this route. You can't keep throwing darts at these veterans, these older veterans. Now, if we're talking about Lamar Jackson, I could get on board with that, but they got to stop with the Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan stuff. So that's where I'm at with it. And what a spot to be for the Arizona Cardinals, who can move back, get a little more draft capital, and still select Will Anderson at 5. Ideal scenario for them. I think that this is kind of what they need to have happen. Arizona, honestly, they might even want to trade back again. I mean, that's kind of the state of the roster. Wouldn't be surprised to see them move back even further than 5. But in this scenario, you are moving back. You're getting extra draft capital, and you're getting one of the few blue chip players of the draft. So, give and take, I think there. This is the one where it started to get a little bit more interesting for me. I ultimately decided on Devon Witherspoon here, the cornerback out of Illinois. Right now, a minus 110 favorite to go in this spot. Obviously, again, looking at he's met with them. He's kind of done everything with the Lions. He kind of fits, like if you're flipping a coin or if you're trying to decide between him and Gonzalez, which one makes more sense in this spot, Witherspoon just seems more like a Dan Campbell guy to me. I think that there's more of a physical presence, and that's what he offers to the position. I think he'll give you a little bit more in the run game. I think there's some technical stuff to refine. But I know he's a lot of people's CB1s. I slightly am on Christian Gonzalez above him. But I love the player for sure, and I think Dan Campbell and the Lions love the player too, and they'd be happy to take him in this spot. This is where the slide is going to stop for Jalen Carter. And there's probably going to be a bunch of people that are like making a joke about this because it's the Raiders taking a guy that's got some character concerns coming in. I don't think many people are going to be joking if this hits the way that, Jalen Carter, to me, the number one player in this class, just from a football perspective, if everything else checks off, this is an unbelievable steal. This is unbelievable value at number 7 for Jalen Carter and the Raiders. So I like the landing spot. I think that when you look at what, Josh McDaniels' time has been so far in Vegas, like they need to hit on this now or never. So they got a new GM there, but still Josh McDaniels, kind of a vote of confidence, at least for this season. We'll see how it plays out, but I like this landing spot for sure. Number 8, Atlanta. We're going to go Tyree Wilson. It's going to be redundant for me to continue to say they've met with a guy because obviously that's why I'm making this pick. But yeah, I think Atlanta is just so desperate for pass rush. They're willing to take the chance on a guy that's more of traits over production at this point, just really the 1 year of production, but athletic freak, really a different build for the position. You just don't see guys that are built like that playing that position come around often. So I think they'll take the swing. They've been starved to get some pass rush help in there. I kind of like, second rounder last year, Arnold Ebiketie. I think that's fine. But here you get a premier potential pass rush option for you in Tyree Wilson. I'm not incredibly high on this. It's a little bit rich for me for the player. But I think that this is around the spot where he's going to go. Now let's start cooking. This is where it's really gonna I'm really diving into the meetings here. We're going down the board a little bit. I think Darnell Wright's the first tackle that comes off the board. I do. I'm buying into this 100%. If Mel Kiper's not just throwing things against the wall because he wants to. I think there's genuinely a lot of teams that have Darnell Wright as the number 1 tackle on their board. Him and Chicago have been a match now for a while. The betting odds continue to move on this. I think Darnell Wright to Chicago makes sense, and I think it's something that's probably a little bit easier for Chicago to sell because of the move down, them getting all the extra draft capital. I'm not sold on this spot for Darnell Wright. I like the player, but yeah, I think this is a pairing that you could for sure see come draft day. A little bit of a we just see a little bit of a run on an offensive line, maybe. I think Peter Skoronski to Philly is just a fantastic team player fit because he can start out. They lost a guard in Isaac Seumalo to Pittsburgh. I think you plug him in, he can play guard right away, and then Lane Johnson's future up in the air after next season. There's your right tackle of the future in Skoronski, who I do believe can stay at tackle, can play at tackle. I think he's going to struggle obviously with some guys that are bendier, can get around the edge quicker and just have longer arms, just because of his own arm length. But such a good player, so refined and pass pro. I'm a huge fan of his. And hey, if it doesn't work out and he is a guard, I think he's a fantastic guard. Tennessee is a very tough one. This is where, to me, it just becomes the value that's there on the board. I got Christian Gonzalez going in this spot. Different ones that I considered here, but pairing him with what you got in that secondary right now, that defense was so bad. I think a lot of people are looking at tackle. They could be a team that moves up for quarterback, sure. Getting a pass catching weapon. Tennessee has so many needs. Sneakily a team that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it, that's going to be really bad next year, in my opinion. They should be looking to move on from Derrick Henry. There's just so many things going on with that team. So here with the Texans, they're going to take the first wide receiver off the board, and it becomes a question of which one. This isn't what I would do. I think they keep the guy in state. Take the first wide receiver off the board, and Quentin Johnston. A lot of people were super high on Quentin Johnston. He's not even in my top 5 receivers. Just so boom or bust. And these guys out of the Big 12, they didn't ask him to do a lot at TCU in terms of the routes that he's running. Very good after the catch. I would definitely give him that. I think there's a role for him in the NFL that he can carve out. I think landing spot is going to be very important. And listen, I like D'Amico Ryans a ton. Just until there's some body of work there, very hard for me to get on board with anybody going to the Houston Texans and thinking that's a great landing spot. But he does have a rookie QB to come in with. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I would not be taking Quentin Johnston as the number 1 receiver off the board. I wouldn't take any receiver this high, but I think it's very possible. Tackle, I guess 2 or 3, depending on how you look at Peter Skoronski coming off the board here. But it's going to be Broderick Jones, not Paris Johnson, coming off the board, just because of what I've seen from the Jets and their interest in Broderick. I think that it's a plenty. I think they're super interested in Broderick Jones, and I think this is a really good spot for him too. We'll see if the Aaron Rodgers stuff goes down, but I think you look at the state of that team right now, they're very close. That's why they feel like if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're ready to go. But I look at those tackles, those bookend spots. We don't know what Mekhi Becton's going to come back like. He looks to be in great shape, but who knows if that will carry over to actually playing football on the field. Dwayne Brown's not the long-term solution there. George Fant, who knows what's Elijah Vera Tucker could play tackle. I think this is the way to go for them and Broderick Jones. So that's why I went there. Now you're going to see a trade again, and this is I hope no Vikings fan even catches wind of this. Hendon Hooker, round 1, it is happening. I fully believe that he's going to go in the top 20 picks. I think this is a very logical trade down spot because Belichick loves to do it in the first round. I think that he's going to look to acquire some extra capital. And as you'll see later on, I think they're going to be very happy with what they get still from this move down. So yeah, that's where I'm at with this one. And I'm a huge fan of the the Patriots move here. I'm not in on Hendon Hooker in round 1. Absolutely not. But I think that there is some smoke here. Where there's smoke, there's fire. We'll see if this goes down, but I fully believe that Hendon Hooker is going in round 1. It's hard to figure out the exact team. Like it could be Washington, could be Tampa, maybe Detroit with that second first rounder. We'll see. Green Bay, we're going to make them happy. They're finally getting a pass catcher in round 1, but it's not going to be tight end like a lot of people are saying. I'm going to give them JSN here, round 1, pick 15, and I know my boy Jake Shavank is going to be very happy with that selection. I think that he should be. I think it's very different from what they have in that room right now. Just a natural separator. You watch him, and it's like, man, he's not doing anything like crazy, right? Like he doesn't test out of this world or anything like that. Excuse me. He's just so fluid and very easy to fall in love with his game. Washington at 16, another player team fit that I'm a huge fan of. I think they want that man press corner. Joey Porter Jr. to Washington in round 1. I know a lot of Steeler fans are going to be upset about that, but just wait one more pick and you won't be anymore, because it happened. Paris Johnson Jr. fell to 17. I fully believe that this is possible. There's so many people that are like, man, if you want that guy, you got to trade up to get him. There's no way it's going to be possible. I just laid out a scenario where it is for you. Um, whether it's him or Broderick, Skoronski, I mean, if you want to throw Darnell Wright into that category as well, because he's been a popular mock at 17, I think one of those guys is going to be available to the Steelers. And I've totally changed my tune in terms of what the interest has been. And to me, it's because like Andy Weidel really having a ton of influence in that front office, in my opinion. And I think that was the question for me, which was some of the stuff I was hearing. So, yeah, there it is. Paris Johnson to the Steelers. The second of the Lions selection might seem like a little bit of a reach here. What is he listed as? Oh, here we go. Osiris Torrance coming off the board. This is such a Dan Campbell guy, Osiris Torrance. Um, I think that he's going to fall in love with the way that he plays. Again, I don't need to mention like top 30 visits or anything like that, but he did visit with the Lions. That's why I'm taking him here. I think you go down their draft board and it's like these mid round 1 guys. This is about the spot where I think you could see a guard go. Of course, you could consider Skoronski a guard and consider him the first one off the board. But this is a great landing spot for him. In just that Detroit offensive line, which is probably the strength of that team already, just getting even better. Tampa Bay, the slide is going to stop here for Lucas Van Ness, who a lot of people have been given some, top 10 buzz. I think it's certainly possible, but I also think it's certainly possible that he doesn't go until this range as well. Tampa Bay, I think, desperate for some pass rush. I like Van Ness a little bit more rushing from the inside. So it'll be interesting to see how Tampa Bay uses him. But this is, to me, a really good landing spot for him with some of the vets that are on that team and he can learn behind. So they just they're another team, though, that I feel like just kind of keeps throwing these darts at edge rushers in the first round. Joe Try and Shayanka. There's some other guys there that are younger, too, like just within the last few draft classes. So, hey, eventually one will hit, right? Seattle here. I like this pick a ton. Nolan Smith. Hard to find a home for him though so early. I think he could go as early as 8 to Atlanta. That in-state stuff, with Georgia, Atlanta. Atlanta has said even like openly that they got little asterisks on their draft boards for guys that have gone to Georgia or were born in Georgia. So Nolan Smith would certainly make sense for a ton of teams throughout here. But Seattle with the second first-round pick, I really like that landing spot too. Another team, they got, probably better seasons than they would have expected from Darrell Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu. They also got Boye Mafe there, who they recently spent some high capital on, but they still need more pass rush help there, and I like that landing spot. We're going to have another wide receiver come off the board, and the question is going to be which one. It's really interesting looking at who the Chargers have met with it, because they haven't met with a ton of guys that are getting round 1 buzz, but the one that they have is the one we're going to give them, and that's Jordan Addison at 21. I really like the fit of Zay Flowers. I just really haven't seen a ton of smoke there. So Jordan Addison here at 21, a guy that really didn't test well. I think some people have talked about that impacting his draft stock. That's why he's not the number 1 wide receiver off the board. Still really like the player. You still watch him on tape, and he does everything that you would want. So I don't see him having like a massive slide. The Baltimore Ravens here, we're going to take a swing on the traits, somebody they've met with. Deonte Banks could make a ton of sense. Haven't seen a ton of smoke, and he's actually the suggestion here for the pick. That's probably the way I'd be going. Keely Ringo is going to be the pick, though, who they've shown a ton of interest in. Honestly, going down the board even a little bit more, if there's some smoke to him sneaking into round 1, Tyreek Stevenson is a guy that they've met with, too. I would keep an eye on him, too. I'm not talking just specifically the Ravens at this point, but that's a name to keep an eye on come draft day. This is where the Patriots slid back to, and they're taking Bijan Robinson. Finally, he comes off the board. This is a guy, another one, like a hard guy to find a home for, even though he's such a good player, like clear-cut top 5 player overall in this draft class. Positional value, though, being a running back, he's not going to go that high, you wouldn't think. Maybe somebody takes a chance on it. I talked about like Atlanta being that first potential spot for Nolan Smith. I think it's kind of the same case with Bijan. Where can you find a home for him, though, in that 8 to this point range? But here for New England, you acquired some extra draft capital, and then you take the guy that you wanted all along. So I like it a lot. 24 to Jacksonville. This is an easy pick. And again, one of my favorite player team combinations here in Brian Branch. They need a slot corner. Brian Branch, probably going to be a slot corner in the NFL. Mainly, you can move him around a little bit. He can do a lot of different things. He can play that overhang for you. He can play around the line of scrimmage a bit. But I like him as a slot corner immediately at the NFL level. Jacksonville needs that, and makes a ton of sense to me. 25 for the Giants, John Michael Schmitz, the first center off the board. This is around the spot where I think that he goes. I think that he finds a home in round one. I think he sneaks in, and I think the Giants make a ton of sense when you look at their needs. They just paid Danny Dimes, continue to build around him, and John Michael Schmitz, to me, easy center one. I like this spot. Dallas replacing one Dalton with another Dalton. Dalton Schultz out, Dalton Kincaid in. To me, the tight end one. Best pass catching tight end in this class for sure. And I just think if you're looking for a tight end that can, rip up the seam, really shred defenses, and just another pass catching weapon for Dak in that offense, this is your guy. You brought in already Brandon Cooks via trade this year. They're really kind of retooling that pass catching group, and Dalton Kincaid just another fantastic addition to that. This is a guy kind of sneaking into round one. Maybe not a ton of buzz here. Steve Avila, though. I think when you look at Buffalo, the offensive line, they got to figure out a way to run the football. And I think you look at that right side of the offensive line, at guard and tackle with Spencer Brown, too, even. They need an upgrade there. And I think Steve Avila, very nasty dude, is going to start getting some late round buzz. And, well, he has already. But I really think that he's got a good shot to sneak into the back end of round one. Cincinnati will take tight end 2 or tight end 1 off the board here, and Michael Mayer. I hate this as a Steelers fan because I think Michael Mayer is a fantastic football player. But yeah, I think it's a great landing spot for him. They lost Hayden Hurst, and I think when you just talk about Michael Mayer's overall game as a pass catcher, as an inline blocker, he can do it all as a tight end. Cincinnati really going to be looking for that sneakily. They could be in on running back depending on how the Joe Mixon situation plays out. They could always use O-line. They've lost some pieces in the secondary. There's a ton of different directions that they could go there. Michael Mayer, the value, fantastic, though, in this spot, and that's the direction we're going to roll with. New Orleans, this was a tough one because Miles Murphy he just continues to fall, but that's not the direction we're going to go. We're going Kalijah Kancey out of Pitt. Maybe the best interior pass rusher in this class. I think you just kind of got to accept what he is in the run game, which, not much. He's not going to offer you anything against the run. And don't buy into the, Aaron Donald talk, please. Kalijah Kancey isn't Aaron Donald. He's Kalijah Kancey. And I think he's going to be a good pro. It's just about the right fit. I think one pick later could actually be a better fit, but I think New Orleans does take the swing on this. I know they're very interested, and we'll see how it plays out. Philly still, even with him coming off the board, they still want to look D-line at this point. This is Howie Roseman, trenches. Peter Stronsky, pick 10. Brian Brzee, pick 30. And Brian Brezee's best football might be ahead. And that's kind of how I view the situation. Dealt with so many things on and off the field the last couple of seasons. If you look at just 2020, you would have thought like this guy is going to be a top 10 pick when he comes out. That obviously hasn't played out. The rest of his college career didn't go that way. Some things happened out of his control. And here we are where he's going the back end of round one. But I think, if you're looking at him, you think his best football's ahead, take him in a spot where you can get that 5th-year option on him still. I really like the landing spot. In Kansas City, they get their guy still at 31. The league let it happen. Zay Flowers at 31. We're not going to, do we have to make this pick just for this to end, I guess? Mock Draft Database got it all messed up. This isn't a first-round pick for Pittsburgh, but being that they're here, hey, let's just take Deonte Banks because that's awesome. But anyways, here it is. Let's go back through it. Bryce Young at 1. CJ Stroud at 2. All these ads that always pop up on these sites. Anthony Richardson with a move up from Seattle at 3. Will Levis at 4. Will Anderson at 5. Devon Witherspoon at 6. Jalen Carter at 7. Tyree Wilson at 8. Darnell Wright at 9. Peter Skoronski at 10. Christian Gonzalez at 11. Quentin Johnston at 12. Broderick Jones at 13. Hendon Hooker at 14 with a move up from Minnesota. Jackson Smith and Jigba at 15. Joey Porter Jr. at 16. Paris Johnson Jr. at 17, Osiris Torrance at 18, Lucas Van Ness at 19, Nolan Smith at 20, Jordan Addison at 21, Keely Ringo at 22, Bijan Robinson at 23, Brian Branch at 24, John Michael Schmitz at 25, Dalton Kincaid at 26, Steve Avila at 27, Michael Mayer 28, Kalijah Cansey 29, Brian Brzee at 30, and Zay Flowers at 31 to wrap up round one. Folks, there it is, my final predictive mock. Let's see how many of these I can get. Let's see how many of these are close. Let me know in the comments how you're feeling about it. What do you think for your team? Once again, if you are new or if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Leave me a like. Hit that notification bell. Really helps me out as I'm trying to grow this channel out and continue to bring a bunch of different types of content. I know it's been a lot of NFL draft focused stuff right now because we're so close to it, but I promise different content is on the way. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know how you're feeling about your team's pick or any picks, and we'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.